relying too much on tools is a mistake. I think that, that ends up with a lot of duplicate robotic content. I think that's especially relevant now with AI tools.
Before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free. And now, back to today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SaaS SEO Show. I'm your host, George Kasiotis, and today I'm very happy and excited to be joined by Melanie Broder. Melanie is a writer living in Los Angeles. When she's not helping startups build their brands and express their ideas, she's working on her novel or jumping in the ocean. Melanie, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I usually, as part of the intro, say a few things about the guest, but I guess I will let you do that. Can you please share a few things about you and your background and what has brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I do love jumping in the ocean, but that's not exactly relevant to the audience today. So I'm happy to dive a little bit deeper. So yeah, I've been working in SaaS for 8 years now, and I kind of happened into it. My background's really in creative writing, and I started my career in book and magazine publishing, and I just sort of got into content in 2015 to see what it was all about. It was this sort of new thing, a new way for people sort of with a writing or editing background to be a part of the startup world and scene. So I was really keen on that. And so I moved out to San Francisco and joined a small startup called Padlet, which is not so small anymore. And they're kind of in the edtech, but also SaaS space. And after that, I worked at Animals, which is a content marketing agency. And after that, I worked at Slight, which is documentation software, which is focused mostly on, or almost exclusively on B2B. So I have found a sweet spot in these sort of small to medium size SaaS firms. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit that, my writing background doesn't make me the best technical marketer in the game, but I'm definitely I've played to my strengths as a writer and editor and translator of ideas. So I think that my ability to be successful or navigate this world has been through the ability to translate complex ideas, whether it's from founders or about products, into simple, easy to understand and engaging content.
Having seen content through all these different lenses, working at a content marketing agency, then at a SaaS company, now as a freelancer, what do you think makes a content program successful?
That's a tough question, and I feel like people are still trying to figure it out. I think that there are a few things. I think that having buy-in and commitment from the stakeholders, the higher-ups at a company, the C-suite, is really important. I think that companies that don't sort of know what their product is or their value proposition is or their positioning is are not going to succeed with content. And I think relying on content to figure out what that is a mistake. And I think that, a strategy behind marketing and behind growth in general, beyond just acquisition, is really important to making content successful. And then from the content manager end, I think constant communication about the value, not only like what you're doing, but why you're doing it and the value you're delivering. I think that that's super important to making a successful content program.
Do you think that the value should only be communicated in terms of like revenue or pipeline generated, or are there other ways in your experience to communicate the value of content marketing?
I think it really depends. I think you kind of have to read the room. I mean, at times, revenue is really important. Like right now, revenue is super important. And companies are, the economy is not as robust as it was 2 years ago. So I think the value is quite literal in this current environment. But in other moments, I mean, I think that like companies are more invested in building a brand or, making the founder a more prominent voice or doing something that their competitors are not doing. And I think that those things are more qualitative and of course important. But yeah, I mean, I think that having a strong communication about the growth potential or, I think I don't want to ramble here, but, talking about growth in terms of like, this content led to this sales outcome is always going to be an advantage and a strength.
I think that, one thing that we are doing and it kind of helps because it takes a while until a content program starts like paying dividends, right? And starts working and like we can reap the benefits of our work and so on. What we do is that we try to like take it to like different stages of this growth and try to communicate small wins in each of these stages, right? And I think that this can keep everyone excited because it takes a while until it starts kicking in, right? And so in the meantime, you have to have people excited, especially the people who are making decisions about budgets and so on. And like in that context, communicating pretty much everything, right? Even from the smallest thing, like someone shared that on social media or one of our salespeople used that in one of the demo calls, which went well, even though it may haven't like led to a sale and so on. And so we try to do that. I don't know if that in your experience helps, but communicating small wins until we get to a point where like the content machine, let's say, starts working, is something I've seen to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said like, content leading directly to sales outcomes. I mean, it's so rare that you can actually draw that line, we published this piece of content last week and then next week someone, visited that piece of content and clicked buy now. Like that's not necessarily how it works. There's several touch points and all that. So I mean, I would walk that back a little bit, but at the same time, I think you're totally right about small wins. And I think that social media is really instrumental in that. Like it's so easy to see an impact like that, seeing a prominent founder share something or seeing something go viral on a Hacker News or just, get shared in a newsletter. Like, I think that every little bit counts. And especially if you're trying to be more visible, in the market.
So we talked about what makes a content program successful, what makes it unsuccessful, or what are some mistakes that you see SaaS companies make when it comes to their content program?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's companies and content people make mistakes. I think from the company perspective, I think treating content as a luxury. We see right now, again, not to like be too, we want to focus on sort of, evergreen, but it's hard to ignore the environment right now. But, I think a lot of companies are, cutting back on content right now because it's seen as like, oh, this piece of entertainment, as opposed to valuable education for users and sales collateral for the product. I think so. Treating content as a luxury. I think pivoting and changing niches constantly. Like it does take a while to build up authority and expertise. And I think that if you one day say that you're an expert in remote work, and then the next day you say you're an expert in spreadsheets, like that's not gonna work for you. I think relying too much on tools is a mistake. I think that that ends up with a lot of duplicate robotic content. I think that's especially relevant now with AI tools. I think sometimes companies go overboard on length, long form everything, especially with blog content. Like it's overkill to have everything be 2,000 words plus. Like that's not necessary. I obviously have a lot of opinions on this, but I think lastly, like separating growth and SEO from like original content is a mistake. I think they work together, and I don't think companies should have like this separate, like really creative brand content that nobody sees versus this SEO content that they kind of have to execute for growth. And there's no spark or creativity or originality in it. So I hate when there's a separation between those two things.
I would like to move to the next question, but at the same time, before I do that, I would like to ask your opinion on this sort of, it has to be 2,000 words, mantra that we all used to subscribe to, or most of us used to subscribe to. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that like that is very much based on sort of a Google algorithm thing. And, it's like the longer an article is, the more authoritative it is. And I think we should think about, other ways that people are searching for information. I mean, there's already like featured snippets or Google Voice, and like nobody wants to have a 2,000 word article read to them if they're like asking Google or Siri, what is X, or how do I do this? So I think that like you have to consider that not everybody's going to be digesting information in the same way, and plan for the future in terms of content. And yeah, the 2,000 word thing is just, you can make a point a lot quicker than that. And sometimes you do need an encyclopedia on something, but make it clear that that's what you're doing, and not just like explaining a really basic content, like what is customer acquisition costs. Like that's 500 words at most, like probably could do it in 100 words.
That makes sense. My thoughts on this is that this whole thing, this benchmark, let's say, was established by a study that was conducted sometime in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, by a popular SEO blog. And it was a correlation study, like everything, right? You can't be certain about anything when it comes to organic search. And then this was used by like content people and SEO people as like the benchmark when it comes to, I want to say quality, but it's not. Like the fact that something is above a certain number of words doesn't mean that, it's not indicative of its quality, right? But I think that this is where this whole 2,000 word thing started. Next question I have for you. You mentioned blog content, and one of the thoughts I've been having lately is the fact that we have been very focused, the SaaS industry in general, we have been very focused on the blog as the main vehicle for like publishing content. And I see some signs that, in the future, the blog will not be the main thing. It will be just one of the ways of like publishing content for SaaS companies and other companies, I guess, in other industries and verticals. Do you see that change, or do you feel that the blog will be the main vehicle for like getting content out there?
I know I'm a big fan of blogs, but I definitely don't think that it's the only way to do content well. I think content is a broad term. intentionally. Like it's not writing. Like, you know, the term would be tech writing if that was it. You know, it's content. So I think that there's definitely going to be more diversity going forward. I mean, I think right now the internet's still primarily a written format, but I mean, especially for B2B SaaS, like it's not like you know, TikTok is the primary channel that people are receiving information about B2B SaaS. It's kind of, you know, not appropriate for work. At the same time, like I think that SaaS companies need to play to their strength when it comes to content. I mean, I see a lot of video companies doing video content because that makes sense. You know, TLDV actually does do really good TikToks. You know, I think other places, you know, have really invested in podcasts and in a way that makes sense for them. I really like the company Oliva, which does mental health counseling for businesses, and they do a lot of great like sort of webinar and podcast content because I mean it's talking to people about mental health, about personal stuff, and that really translates well to those conversations. So I think that like there's definitely going to be proliferation of other types of content. I don't think that blogs are going to go away, and I think that even you know, there are cycles of these things. Is like there's so many blogs and people got blog fatigue, but now there's going to be so many reels or there's going to be so many podcasts that people are going to get fatigued of that and wish that they could just go back to the days of Blogspot and Tumblr and just look at little blogs. So I don't know. I don't think the blog is going away, but definitely going to have other types.
That's good to know. And I think this is a great segue to the next question I have for you, which is, I feel that we sort of equated the blog and blog content to content for a search audience in many cases, not in all cases. Do you see room for different content types and like different formats, something more, let's say, original that doesn't necessarily have the goal of like, you know, targeting a keyword, getting organic visibility, getting, you know, clicks and visits to organic search?
Do I think that other types of content will contribute to SEO?
No, but I mean, we have been, as I see it, we were heavily focused on SEO content, right? Content for a search audience. But I think that this is sort of not inefficient because it's obviously working for many companies, right? But there has to be more than that in a let's say in a successful content program, right? So my question is, do you think there is space, there is room for more content types beyond SEO content? And if so, what could these content types be for SaaS companies?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I still, it's a matter of filtering. I mean, it's like the more years that the internet is in existence, like the more content there is, and it's just harder and harder to filter out the stuff that you need. And Google is still sort of the number one filter for stuff. I mean, even, you know, you open any browser and it's connected to Google or a search engine. It's not, I mean, you discover content on social media platforms too. And those seem to be the two main things. Nobody's sort of going directly to websites anymore. So that I still think SEO is going to be important for a really long time. I think it will evolve. I think, you know, Google is always changing, and like, you know, eliminating cookies is a huge change that's coming to search. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it will always be stuff. I mean, sorry, excuse me. You will always need to be creating content for a search audience. But there's definitely like, I think, I don't know. I think with social, there are opportunities for more creative stuff to come to the surface. But that being said, it still needs to be, in terms of business or B2B, Like it still needs to be professional and not just funny, not just memes. Like it has to be, substantive and useful. So
That makes sense. Thoughts on content that's created that has the objective of establishing either like a person inside the company or the company as the thought leader in that space. What are your, like, people refer to this as thought leadership content, but I do not subscribe to that term because thought leadership is the objective. It's not like you can't say that this is thought leadership content. Like, I do not subscribe to that, but I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
yeah, that's a good point. I've always called it thought leadership content, but it's really kind of just strong opinion content that comes from an individual person. And I think that a thought leadership strategy or goal has to be sort of centered around one person being the voice of the brand or of the company. I think it's sort of like you have to have, whether it's a founder or CEO or head of marketing or head of product person being willing to step into the role of thought leader, because the point of thought leadership is that it's original and it's dynamic and it's human, and that can only come from a single person. It's not like thought leadership content isn't going to come from a brand, so it has to be in conjunction with the sort of personal brand of the person producing it, even if there's a ghostwriter behind it.
Do you think though that this should only come, let's say, even if it's ghostwritten, but should it come only from the higher, let's say, ranks in a company, CEO or I don't know, C-level, or we could say that, we try to build different people inside the company, like from customer success, from products, from sales, and try to develop them as like the person from that company who talks about these things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely see a lot more companies trying to do that now with, like the head of departments stepping into the role of thought leader on their particular topic. I think what's, in an ideal world, everybody could speak out on topics that they have experience with, and, they're free to do so. I think, unfortunately, in terms of like magnifying that audience and building authority, it's just like C-suite or, those titles sort of convey experience and leadership in a way that's just makes people want to pay attention more and give them credit for the things that they say. So
that makes sense.
Everybody can be a thought leader, but it's a lot easier to sort of start with people who are leaders to begin with.
That makes sense. One thing that we've encountered I'm talking as an agency now, right? As an agency, one thing we've noticed is that in general, companies are sort of hesitant when it comes to outsourcing such content, like content that has the objective of like establishing that company as a thought leader in the space, or people from that company, right? Since we are talking about specific people from the company. Have you seen that? They are okay outsourcing like content for a search audience, but it seems to me that companies are sort of have this notion that, anything that's more like thought leadership like should be produced in-house because we know and you don't.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it sort of goes back to the last question where we sort of had to establish a definition for thought leadership. I think every company nowadays, it's been a hot topic or term, and every company's like, oh, we need thought leadership content, but they sort of don't know what it is, or they think it's just a founder posting on LinkedIn, or they think it's just a blog that's like really opinionated. And I think that the question of like who can write it is, anybody can write it. Like I think agencies are great for thought leadership or freelancers. I write thought leadership content for people because it's about conveying the ideas. Like, and I think that whoever can do that best should be writing it. I don't think every technical founder, I think most technical founders are not natural writers. I think that they're communicators, and they know how to build things out of ideas, but maybe, talking about it isn't necessarily their strong suit. So I think you do need to sort of work closely with the person whose voice it's being presented in, because, people can smell bullshit from a mile away. Or they can smell, a writer that's just, you don't want like necessarily a very junior person writing about, I don't know, very complex topics. But if the writer or the agency spends a lot of time with the founder or the CEO and, is able to sort of understand where they're coming from and their thinking behind things, and then translate that into, piece of content, I think that like outsourcing, it might even be better.
I agree with you. And I would like people to outsource, and companies outsource more of this stuff, because especially after a while, when we work with a company, for 6 months or 12 months, whatever, we get a pretty decent understanding of like the audience, maybe not like the exact ideas or thoughts that the founder has or the CEO of the company has, right? But if there is a system where you interview that person and there is an open dialogue between like, the company and the agency or the freelancer, I guess we can like retrieve these ideas and we can transform them into or like translate them into great content, right? I would like to go back to SEO content for a minute and ask your thoughts on the extra E that Google added to EAT, which of course stands for experience. And my question to you is, how can companies demonstrate experience through their content?
It allows like a bit more diversity in terms of who gets to be an expert. I think that like, you don't want to necessarily read content from someone that doesn't have any experience in a certain field or a certain topic. But you don't want to read fitness content from someone who's never published anything on fitness in the past. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily like the CEO of a fitness company. So I think it actually is a really good thing for the content industry, because there's a lot of writers out there who have a lot of experience, but not necessarily like have been like labeled the experts. And I think that like experts may be more focused on brand, and experience can be more flexible for individuals.
In that example, though, should the person writing the content be fit themselves?
Well, who can judge that?
Yeah, who can judge? That's right. But like if we think about it in SaaS terms, it's like me reading a piece of content by an email marketing software, and I'm reading tips by someone who has never sent an email marketing, campaign, never practiced what they are like basically trying to educate me on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I do think there is like a lot of bad content out there written by, and it's not the writer's fault. They've been sort of assigned stuff that's out of their depth. But at the same time, I think that like it's been really rigid in terms of, determining who has expertise, and it can be wrong. Expertise can be, or experience can be, just having a personal experience. And I think that like that's a little bit hard to convey algorithmically.
Yeah, because particularly, especially for SaaS, that would mean that every single one of us who, let's say, tries to write a piece of content, we have to be reviewers. We have to actually go on and use the product, right? Which is not easy, right? Let's say you're creating a listicle with alternatives. I can't imagine how you can actually go and try all of them, unless we are talking about like we will not review 10, we will review 3, right? And we will actually use them. But still, there are obstacles. In the example of email marketing, I mean, how can you use 3 different email marketing software? It's very difficult because you have to build or import a list there, you have to send an email and so on. This comes only with years of experience after you've switched different solutions.
I mean, I think I'm often asked to write about, like CRMs, Salesforce, HubSpot, and I think that there are people whose whole careers have been, based around these tools, and they're the ones maybe not necessarily reading, how to do basic stuff on them, but if they're comparing a new CRM to the ones that they have experience with, you're going to have to, prove that how it works in a way that that communicates that to them. I mean, I think, it's sort of like if you're writing for an expert audience, you have to have the expertise to back it and experience to back it up. But, if you're writing more introductory stuff about email marketing, then you don't necessarily have to. But I mean, it's true. I think that there could generally be less content out there, and it would be great if, people write about things they know about. I don't know why we would write about things that we don't know about.
That's a good question, and I guess it's a perfect way for me to move to my next question, which is around AI content. It seems to me that right now the dust was kind of settled, and it seems to me that AI content may not be the thing that we all thought, would be. But regardless of what I think, I would like to hear your thoughts on AI content.
Yeah, I think, the hype has calmed down a little bit. That doesn't minimize how exciting or revolutionary of a technology it is, and how much people need to still pay attention to it. I think for content, it's a really useful tool. I already use it as like a partner in terms of brainstorming and outlining. I think it's really great for structuring ideas. I think a lot of times you have so much information that it can be hard to organize it into a way that's legible to the audience. And I think that that's a big part of creating content. And, honestly, you would get there eventually, but it's just a lot faster. And, with SaaS content, you're often producing 2-3 pieces a week. And so I think that, having that partner there that can sort of bounce ideas off of you or make your paragraph sound a little bit cleaner, I think it's great. I think primarily the use case for it now is like editing more than writing. It's not going to give you reliably good original ideas, but if you have the idea pretty far along, it can help you take it to that next level.
I agree with you that editing may be an interesting use case for AI, and I also agree that it's a tool, right? It's a tool, but regardless of all the buzz around it, especially a few months ago, mm-hmm. I don't see it as something that will replace humans. And if it does, I mean, I suppose that for us as an agency, that would be the very bottom of the market, which these are companies that would not work with us with or without AI. It doesn't matter, right? So they may as well use AI content. Who is going to consume that content and who's going to and how the company will benefit from it? I don't know. I have a big question mark there.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see it like that, but also for companies that do have a more established content function and are willing to invest in it, there's always going to be holes that you need to fill, sort of with, if you're an email marketing company, there's certain basic questions that you're going to have to answer that, are sort of above and beyond or below what the content team needs to focus on in terms of, like marketing goals. But there's still going to be people who are going to be like, what's a DNS? Like that's like going to be a question that people have, and that's fine. Use the AI to answer those questions.
That makes sense. Second to last question I have for you: what do you think the future holds for SaaS companies when it comes to content marketing and SEO?
Yeah, I really would like to be optimistic about it and see that I sort of talked how there's come a divide between brand or thought leadership content and SEO content. And you talked about that as well. I think it's like a trend where we see that content has been a bit divorced from growth, or like, people see SEO content as not, real creative stuff, which in a lot of cases it's not anymore. And I think that the future will be that there will be this branded content that's more creative, and the stuff that you see more from B2C companies. And there was talk about this, every SaaS company should be a media company, and I don't think it's that necessarily, but I do think that value can be conveyed in so many different ways. And I think that brand, as more and more companies proliferate, will become more and more important. And I think that originality and authenticity and humanity will be rewarded. And I don't think the world needs more content that was generated by robots. I think that companies will see that in order to last forever, that they have to create stuff that will last, and there's no shortcuts to that.
I think that's a great way to close this episode. Last question: where can people find out more about you and get in touch? So my website, melaniebroder.com, is a great way to reach me. There's a contact form there. You can see a bit of my work there. Also LinkedIn, I'm there, Melanie Broder on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow or add. Would love to chat. That's great. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you.
Before you go, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free.